All right, guitar students, so we've learned how to build chords, how to build scales, how to move songs from one key into another key and play them with a capo, but you may still be having some trouble doing that. Let's say perhaps that you went online just recently and were very inspired, and so you looked up the chords to your favorite song, and you saw perhaps that they are G minor, E flat, F, and B flat, and that's great. And you said, okay, cool, I know how to throw a capo on and play those chords, but you look at those and say, I don't know what key I'm coming from, what key I should go to. These are still just chords. What do I do with that? So let's talk in this video real quick about what we would do if you are given chords and you need to figure out what key to put them in and how to kind of move those around. Well, here's what we would do. The first thing I would say is that we need to figure out what key we are in originally. What key are these chords originally in? Now, there's a way that we can do that, and I'll come back to that in a little bit, but the easiest way is to just look up. Literally, you can type in your song, what key is such and such in, and that'll be fine. The other thing that you can do is if you're looking this up on, perhaps you get to a website, ultimateguitar.com. I don't know if you've come across that website before. And a lot of times they'll have words for your song and chords written up above it. Usually they'll tell you the key up at the top. So you can find the key usually just by searching it. Again, I'll tell you how to do it manually in a couple of minutes, although that's a little bit trickier. But for now, let's just say that you've looked it up and you're given the information that this is in the key of B flat. That's probably the most important key piece of information that you need, because now what we need to do is we need to build up a B flat major scale. And guess what? You know how to do that, which is awesome. Truthfully, you don't actually even need to properly build up the whole scale, but we might as well do that anyway. So let's do a B flat, go up a whole step to C, whole step to D, half step to E flat, whole step to F, whole step to G, whole step to A. We would get to B flat again. And now we need to number our chords, or our notes and our chords, right? So B flat's gonna be 1, C is 2, D is 3, E flat is 4, F is 5, G is 6, A is 7. I need to take my minor chords 2, 3, and 6, and I need to make them minor, C minor, D minor, and G minor. Sorry, there we go. Well, now, guess what? This is pretty easy. Now we're free to look back up here and say, okay, I know what numbers I need. Here's my G minor chord. What is that? That's 6. Okay, here's my E flat chord. What is that? That's 4. Here's my F chord. That's 5. And B flat, that's 1. It's just a 6, 4, 1, 5 progression. So now, okay, well, what key do I need to play it in? We actually talked about this in the last video. It's either going to be G or C. How do I figure out which one of these? Well, I know that I want it to ultimately sound like B flat, and I need to raise either a G or a C up to that. So if I'm going to raise something up to it, then to find that note, I need to look down first. So I'm going to start at my B flat on my chart, and I'm going to go count down or count to my left until I find either a G or a C on the same string. So go ahead real quick, just so that we're all together. Let's take a look at your B flat on the E string. Start looking to your left, and you'll notice that you run into a G before you run into a C. If you found a C, you were going to the right. That would be going in the wrong direction. You want to look to your left. I'm going to a G. Okay, so I say, great. I know that I want to play this in the key of G ultimately. In G, what are these chords? 6 is E minor. You can build up the scale if you need to do this, although perhaps you're starting to get used to which chords are your 1, 4, 5, and 6 by now. My 4 chord is going to be C, 5 is going to be D, and 1 is going to be G. Great, these are the chords that I play. Last thing I need to know is what do I do with my capo, okay? Well, what I'm going to do with my capo is I'm going to, again, take a look back at my chart again. I'm going to find a G. How many times do I need to raise that G up until I hit a B flat? Once, twice, 3 times. So that means I'm going to go capo 3. I throw a capo 3, I play these chords, and I'm ready. I've got my song in B flat. That's great. So this is the main thing that you want to know how to do. I want to throw a couple of caveats in. So the first thing is that you'll notice that so far all of my examples we've done have used 1, 4, 5, and 6. We'll also sometimes run into 2. Those are by far the most common chords you run into. Yes, there's other things. Yes, you run into weird stuff like a major 3 chord, a major 2 chord, a minor 4 chord, a flat 7 chord. And yeah, those are all weird, but they're far beyond the scope of what we're doing now. The vast majority of what you're going to run into in day-to-day life is going to be 1, 4, 5, and 6 chords, and occasionally maybe a 2 chord thrown in there. Those are the main things that you want to be comfortable with finding, okay? So let's say now that we're going to do the same example, but I had you a moment ago look up what the key was, or maybe I tell you what the key is. Let's say that you don't have that luxury. You need to find out on your own what the key is. Well, here's the thing. If you happened to pick a weird song that does some strange stuff, let's say you picked Africa by Toto, which is cool, but they change keys between the verse and the chorus. So if you try to look and analyze them, they're not going to make a ton of sense unless you know ahead of time what you're doing. But let's say that you're just running into a nice normal song that stays in one key and uses a predictable chord progression. Let's talk about what you can do to find that information out. So I'm going to erase all this, and we're going to go to some other mysterious key that I haven't told you about. You can pretend that there's some light jazz in the background, like I've got some crazy YouTube editing and am doing something cool while I erase everything, but let's be honest, I'm just erasing. Hopefully you like the sound of erasers. Okay, let's get to our chords, and let's say now that we're running into F minor, A flat, E flat, and D flat. Again, another weird key that we're probably not comfortable with. Well, what do I do with this? If I need to find out what key I'm in, basically what I need to do is one of two things. Ultimately, you'll develop or should develop your ear enough that on listening to these chords go by, you can hear which one sounds at rest. In other words, I described before that the whole purpose of a key is so that it sounds like you're moving towards a particular point. Well, in an ideal world, your ear is trained that you can listen to these and you can hear which of those is that end point. But let's say that that's not the case. Let's say that you want to mess around with these a bit and figure them out. Well, what we're going to do basically is make an educated guess. And so in what way can we make our educated guess? Well, what I want you to look at here is this chord progression. So let's start by assuming that we're using 1, 4, 5, and 6. Again, I know I might not be using that, but that is a really good first guess to make, that I'm using 1, 4, 5, and 6. Well, here's the thing. I've got one minor chord, and I've got three major chords. In my 1, 4, 5, and 6, I've got one minor chord, and I've got three major chords. That gives me a lot of information. So right off the bat, before I look at anything else, if I'm looking at this whole set and I see a single minor chord, my guess is that this chord is a 6 chord. Why? If I think I have 1, 4, 5, and 6, 6 is the only minor chord. This is a great guess to start. But we can't just guess. Now we need to check our work. So I would say, okay, if this is 6, how does that make sense to the other things? Well, let's talk through that. If this is a 6 chord, then I can hypothetically make up a scale. Now, this scale that I write is not actually going to be correct, but that doesn't matter because we know enough information about scales that we can get the information we need out of them. For example, a scale has to include one of every letter name. Now, we don't know, for example, if this is a 6 scale degree has to be F if this is indeed a 6 chord. That means my 7th scale degree should be a G of some kind. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if it's a G flat or a G sharp or a G natural, but I don't really care right now because none of these chords are G. Having this G written down here is really just a placeholder for me. It's just so that I have an account for a number saying, yeah, some kind of G would be 7. But what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to figure out where each of these letters that I do have information about would hypothetically fall. All right, so what would come before F? That would be our 5 potentially. All right, well, what letter is before F? It's an E. E flat, E sharp. Well, look, I'm given an E flat. Might as well add that one in there. How about that? What comes before E? D? Okay, I know that a D something is going to be my 4 chord. Might as well be a D flat. I have that information. My 3 chord, what would come before D? C. Again, that's going to be a C minor, but we don't really care about that. What would come before that? Be some kind of B minor. Now, real quick, just so you know, in this particular key, it would be a B flat minor, but we don't know that, and we don't care about that. Again, this information is just here as a placeholder to help us find this. That would mean that I go back again and 1, A flat. So what I'm going to look at now is I'm going to say, okay, if I'm right, if F was indeed the 6 chord, then I can build up a pretend scale that tells me where the other notes should fit in. And so now I can check and see if this makes sense. Okay, well, if this is correct, I've got 6, I expect to see 1, 4, and 5. I expect to see A flat, D flat, and E flat. And that's exactly what I see up here. So this is probably a pretty good guess. So A flat becomes my 1 chord, E flat becomes my 5 chord, D flat becomes my 4 chord. This is a totally sensible progression. Now there's a couple other ways that I can come to the same conclusion. Now notice we did this with the minor chord. Let's say real quick that I had a 5 chord progression in here. Go back, again, I don't know any of this information yet. Let's say that I've also got a B flat minor chord. Now this really throws me off. Clearly this can't be 1, 4, 5, and 6. First of all, there's too many chords for that to be the case, right? Also, I've got 2 minor chords. So I'm gonna do a couple other things. I'm gonna say, okay, well, once again, I see 2 minor chords. I expect that one of them is going to be 6 and probably one of them is going to be 2 because I told you that's the next most occurring chord. But maybe even more importantly than that, there are only 3 major chords in any given key. And look, 1, 2, 3, I've got them. If I understand the relationship between these major chords, I can figure everything else out. Let's talk about that. How about this? I just want you to think of the alphabet. And of course, we need to think about it as like a circle, like a clock, because that's what we do. In other words, like G is next to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, because we restart things. But I want you to look at this. If I have a 1 chord and a 4 chord and a 5 chord that are all major, letter-wise, the 4 chord and the 5 chord should be right next to each other in the musical alphabet, right? And the 1 chord should be somewhere away from that. Let me look at these. Okay, A is not right next to D or right next to E, but E and D, they're right next to each other. I can guess that they're probably my 4 chord and my 5 chord. And then I can check my work. Okay, if this indeed is my 4 and 5 chord, D is the lower note, so D would be 4, E flat would be 5. If E is 5, F is 6, G is 7, A flat is 1 again. That makes sense. I can check my work, right? Another way that I can do this, take a look at the relationship. Let's say that I didn't think to do that. I can talk about the relationship between the major chords and the minor chords. So I know, again, letter-wise, what I should expect to see next to each other. 4 chord, 5 chord, and 6 chord should all letter-wise be right next to each other. So let's look at this. Let's say that my initial guess, and we know already that this is wrong, but let's go with it anyway. My initial guess is that B minor is going to be my 6 chord. Okay, I work backwards. A flat should be my 5 chord. That makes sense so far. And now G something should be my 4 chord. I don't see a G. That now makes me say, okay, maybe that guess was wrong. Let me try a different one. What if F minor is my 6 chord? If that's the case, then E something should be 5. D something should be 4. This all checks out. Does that make sense? So when you look at these chords, it's a little bit Sudoku-ish. You can work and say what fits, what should be here, what shouldn't be there. Use the knowledge you know of what you expect to see to find your way through. Again, this is a little bit more work and requires a bit of intuition and practice. The easiest thing that you can do at any given time is just to look up what key is such and such a song in. But you can do it yourself. You just need to get used to it doing these things. That said, I want to give you one last thing. Now, along with this video, I should have sent you a link, so you can find this in your email. It's to a Wikipedia article. Or if you want to look it up right now, you can go ahead and do that. You can Google or whatever search engine you use. Why isn't it Google? Doesn't everyone use that? Anyway, you can look up, type this in exactly, Wikipedia 4 chord songs. When you do that, one of, if not the very first results that should pop up is something that says Wikipedia the 1, 4, 5, 6, I forget what order they're in, progression. It'll show you the Roman numerals. You click on that and you can scroll down and there's a heading that says songs using the progression. Click on that and you're going to scroll down now and you're going to see, if not a couple dozen, maybe hundreds of songs. This is not even an exhaustive list. It is a small sample of songs that all, either entirely or in part, just use your 1, 4, 5, and 6 chords somewhere. And if you scroll down, you can look at the first example that you'll find is 10,000 Reasons by Matt Redman. And then it'll look, if you scroll to the right, you'll see that there's a Roman numeral given. It's 4, 1, 5, 6. Guess what? That's the opening progression to the chorus of that song. Isn't that great? And then beyond that, afterwards, it will tell you what key you're in. So you can figure out where you need to put a capo if it's relevant. So you can find any one of those songs that you recognize personally from that list, and you can figure out what chords you need to play. This is how you can begin the process of teaching yourself songs that we're not going to talk about necessarily in class together. There is one last caveat I want to give with this, and it could be its own whole lesson on how to do it. I just want to give a really quick example. You may be given that a particular key that you're in is in something minor. So we talk about being in the key of G. You might see somewhere, hey, this is in F minor. This is in G sharp minor. If you're given that, that's telling you that that key they gave you, the minor thing, that's your sixth chord. If you can figure it out from there, that's great. If not, here's all you need to do. Go up 3 frets from that. If someone tells you that you're in the key of E minor, go up 3 frets, that would be to G. That's the major key that you're in. That's your 1 chord. If someone tells you that you're in F minor, go up 3. That would go to A flat. That would be your 1 chord, the key that you're in. It's just a weird way that this website gives it. Sometimes they give you the minor key, sometimes they give you the major key. You can use either of those pieces of information. Hopefully you enjoy this. Hopefully you can see where this is going. Happy practicing.